Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience this morning. Welcome to NJBIZ's monthly panel discussion on issues of interest to the business community. This month, the focus is on education. My name is Howard Burns, and I'm the editor of NJBIZ. Our moderator this morning is Lou Manzione, President and CEO of the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in New Jersey, and President of the Independent College Fund of New Jersey, a role that he assumed in July. Prior to returning to New Jersey, Lou was the Dean of the College of Engineering, Technology, and Architecture at the University of Hartford in Hartford, Connecticut. While there, he was chair of the Connecticut Engineering Dean's Council and president of the Connecticut Academy of Science and Engineering. A doctor of chemical engineering, much of Lou's career was spent at Bell Labs Research in Murray Hill. He was also the founding executive director of the new Bell Labs Ireland division near Dublin. His research activities have been in the areas of electronics, antennas, and manufacturing science. He has 18 U.S. patents, and a number of these have been commercialized into millions of products in use around the globe. Please join me in welcoming Lou Manzione.
Thanks, everyone. Welcome this morning. What a timely topic we have to talk about this morning. We have a distinguished panel, which we'll introduce in a minute. Education and the talent pipeline for New Jersey. A critical time for the talent pipeline of this state and any state. We're in a period of declining demographics of high school students across the country, maybe even particularly acute here in the Northeast. Large number of retirees are putting strain on the workforce as well. We hear as many as 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. And then, of course, the digital transformation, which is transforming so many industries and work itself. So, tremendous emphasis on the education system. We are blessed in this state with an excellent one, with many strong corporations spread over many sectors. And so what we'll talk about today is the importance of this education sector to New Jersey business. I'd like to get started by introducing our panel. We'll go right across. Dr. Sam Conn. Sam, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure, good morning. Nice to see you all on this bright, almost fall-time weather now, I think, here. Anyway, I'm Sam Conn, and President and CEO of NJEdge. NJEdge is going into its 20th year of operation here. We're a technology solutions center for higher education, K-12, government, and healthcare. And we have as our main core asset an optical fiber network that spans across the state of New Jersey that connects higher education, K-12, into regional and national research platforms, Internet 2, commodity Internet services, and a lot of other type of professional services as well. Arguably, we have one of the best regional conferences coming up in January. I think you'll see some information on that, called EdgeCon, which is an excellent venue to come together and you meet with higher education executives, K-12 executives, government, healthcare, and learn about new technologies. And our keynote this year is phenomenal. So it's good to be with you this morning, and thanks for having us.
Thanks, Tim. Steve, you would.
Okay, Steve Sirot, College Benefits Research Group, and I'll try to give you my elevator speech that's 40 floors or less. We work with students and their families, hate to borrow the term, but in a more holistic way of college planning. We want to balance the right academic fit for the student, the right social environment for the student, but also the right financial plan for that student and their family. And we started this, my partner and I, David, were financial advisors, and we had families that were coming to us that were really worried about how they were going to afford college. And if they had 3 or 4 or 5 kids, then it was more than just a fear. It was more like a panic. And so we felt it was our responsibility to find out what we could do to guide those people, other than say, well, you better have saved millions of dollars for this experience. So as we started to realize the tremendous demand for that expertise, we wanted to look at it in the perspective of, well, what would I want for my own kids? And it's not just paying for it, it's also paying for the right school with thousands of choices, and there are so many great choices here in New Jersey. What's the right way to go? Should we just buy one book, go buy a ranking, and that's it? It's just not the way that you should make this type of decision. So we have another partner, Janet Moran, who's a certified educational planner. She visits 75 schools every year. We call her our college whisperer. She's amazing. And she really helps us making sure that we're balancing all those aspects of what to do, when to do it, how to do it for the student, getting to a great list of schools that the family has a plan to pay for without being broke.
The next panelist is Craig Westman.
Hi, I'm Craig Westman. I'm from Rutgers University in Camden. I'm in the South Jersey campus. And I think this program put together, I think it's very timely when it comes to what Stephen was talking about, cost of education, affordable education. And my role at Rutgers University-Camden is I'm the Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management. So I oversee Registrar's Office admissions, and most importantly for today's conversation, financial aid. So I am the person who parents yell at me when they don't have enough money. So, but in a good way. And later during the, as we'll talk about our Bridging the Gap program and how that feeds into keeping students in the state of New Jersey and making high-quality education within New Jersey affordable for low, middle-income families, working-class families in the state.
Our last panelist is Jason Redd. Jason, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. I apologize for being slightly late. My name is Jason Redd. I'm from Gibbons, PC. I approached this panel from kind of two different perspectives. One as a director in Gibbons Government Affairs, where we deal directly with legislature, we have a full-service law firm that deals with all sorts of different things in the higher education level. I also was, in my spare time, I also, up until 3 months ago, was the senior advisor to Senator Sweeney, where I worked on these issues specifically in the legislative context, where we looked at how the changing face of higher education, how to prepare our students, looking at K through 12, and I think the chancellor would probably say it's more of a K through 18 perspective. Working with business to make sure that the students, when they finally get to them, the level of training is not significant, so students, or individuals or adults can hit the ground running right when they get there. The last thing, and I think which I'll add a little bit to this conversation is, up until last year, I served as the president of the Trenton School Board, and I think that this is a conversation that we had on multiple occasions, and I think we had some conversations about job training, we had conversations about being prepared for entering into the workforce, and we had some conversations, and I think that the folks up here, they're difficult conversations, but do you talk to folks and say, maybe college isn't it, let's look at the other programs that are there, because they might be a better fit for you in providing job training, so you can kind of hit the ground and enter the workforce that way. So I'm excited to be here. This is a great and timely panel by NJBIZ, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. So let's dive into our first question. It was mentioned by several of our panelists. Education is critically important. The governor has just unveiled his major economic plan on the innovation economy. Of course, this places great emphasis on the higher education system. But we also know that New Jersey has a well-known problem of out-migration of its college-bound students. So I want to ask our panelists how they would help us address out-migration such that we can use our education system to fuel the innovation economy that the governor envisions. So, any of our panelists, out-migration.
You want to tackle this one?
Well, yeah, I can start. It is a challenge within the state. There was an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer a few weeks back showing that New Jersey is the #1 state of high school graduates leaving to go to surrounding states. The article talked about that New Jersey being small, even though we have a lot of higher education options, students, again, like to go somewhere else. Often they go out and incur higher cost. They incur additional loans that they have to take out. And so I know from at least a local perspective within South Jersey, that was one of the things our chancellor was looking at and saying, when we looked at our data, we could see a lot of the students who applied to us that were admitted to us went to the University of Delaware, they may have gone across the river to Temple, Drexel. And the question that was asked was, what do we do to keep that brain trust, if you will, in New Jersey? And what can we do better? And it came back to higher education in terms of affordability, cost, and how can we be a model within the state to lower cost of education, reduce loan debt by students, reduce the need for them also to work. We did a survey, 57% of our students work to afford to go to school. Even at Rutgers Camden, which has been recognized by the Washington Monthly as like the #4 school in the Northeast for best band club. Cost of attendance is low, education quality is high. And so I think that's something not only these folks here will talk about at the state level in terms of working with families, but also how do we, within the state, create programs to make education affordable, to keep students here, prevent that out migration, to at least be competitive with what we have around us as a state.
I just want to say, I think this is a great, I think it's a problem, I think it's a great problem, because I think that a lot of you out in the crowd are similar in age, but I think there was a time when it was anywhere but New Jersey. I don't want to go to Rutgers. I don't want to go to the College of New Jersey. I don't want to go to Rowan. And I think the fact now that it shows kind of the commitment, in Rutgers Camden, the commitment at Rowan, the commitment of the College of New Jersey, where now, when I was serving in the legislature with for Senate President, where people would come in and complain and say, you've got to give more money to the presidents here because we've got to increase capacity. And for a long time, you really saw this out-migration. It was really due to kind of sometimes us New Jerseyans have an inferiority complex, but folks are really seeing the value in the programs that are here. So it really provides an opportunity for the legislature, policymakers to work with universities and folks to keep things there. So that's just a kind of a glasses half full side instead of half empty. So I think that it's a shift that I think is really positive for the universities.
So could I say that certainly the New Jersey companies have a tremendous stake in keeping talent here in New Jersey. What are some of the things that companies can do, or maybe government and companies can do to help expose our students to all the great assets that we have in this state, particularly so many strong companies spread over so many different sectors?
So, Lou, I would add to that I agree that there are all these societal factors out there that are impacting students wanting to leave the state of New Jersey. A lot of it is just getting away from home, having the coming-of-age experience. The traditional student certainly still expects that, and it's hard to get away from home in New Jersey. It's a fairly small state. So certainly we need to do our share of recruitment outside the state of New Jersey to have an inflow of students coming in. And this problem of retention of students, it also parlays over to retention of graduates coming out of the colleges. A skilled labor workforce is one of the principal drivers for economic development, and that's one of the problems we have, as the governor recently said. New Jersey needs to get its technology mojo back. And he's so right about that it's a state that was founded, has a history of innovation. Thomas Edison was here, and somehow that just sort of drifted away from us. We're also at the crossroads in the Northeast. You can't get anywhere in the Northeast without going through New Jersey. And so we're right right at the intersection, right at the apex of where innovation should be happening. And we have good technology companies. We have, a big bio-pharma industry. There's just all kinds of industry and education assets within the state that make so much sense that if we could just start working together more closely to create programs and pathways for students to stay here. One of the things that NJEdge has done recently is signed an agreement with the New Jersey School Boards Association. That's the biggest aggregation point for some 600 plus school districts around the state. And we're starting conversations at a K-20 initiative. Higher education and K-12 need to start talking. Those conversations occur sporadically and in very sort of disparate spots, but nothing at a state level that is really about how do we start to create pathways for students as they're coming through K-12 to really bind and bond with higher education institutions in the state and have a pathway so that when they graduate from high school, they're already inbound to one of our great state institutions. And the ideas are coming forth. I think we're seeing a lot of progress in that area. Higher education institutions are offering up assets to K-12 institutions with virtualization and the internet. Delivery of those assets makes new forms of pedagogy possible at the K-12 level. So I see a very bright horizon if we can just continue to have these dialogues between the parties.
My thought was to keep students in New Jersey, that we should fund a border wall and build a wall around New Jersey, which will let them leave. Border wall. Maybe that's not such a popular idea. We have great schools here, and I've had the privilege of working with so many students and families that have chosen to go to schools like Conn College or Centenary School, Community College, Rutgers, NJIT, TCNJ. We have some great schools here. And when a student and family are making this kind of a big decision, the one thing that we really try to have them accept that they should do this in a very serious way, not just follow the crowd. So if we're working with a high school, we hear the same 10 to 15 schools from almost every kid. And there's thousands of schools out there, right? And very few of them on that 10 to 15 will be in New Jersey. Okay, if we do see Rutgers, it's because mom made me put it on there, right? But that's not the way that you should make such a momentous decision. Do your homework, find out what these schools really have to offer. I also think that schools in New Jersey need to do a better job in looking what other schools across the country, and especially our main competitors, are doing. When you look at University of Delaware, that is a very popular school with students from New Jersey, they do a great job promoting how many students come out and get a job within 6 months. And they work very hard, their career development center, with developing these relationships that feed students into jobs. And they also promote their students to come, not when they're in the last semester of their senior year saying, I'm gonna have to get a job now. They wanna meet the students when they're freshmen and sophomores and talk to them about what their interests are and maybe what they could do now for internships, or maybe what classes they should take. And they'll say, you know what, work with this professor, they're really good in that area, or maybe you want to do a research project with that professor. And so they get them focused on this as a pathway to a career, right? We've got such an edge in New Jersey that we've got so much job opportunity for students, but we don't do a good enough job in really making that a focus and promoting that. So that's one thing that I'd really like to see change.
Could government and or the companies step up to a bigger role in making sure they connect with companies? So kind of would be a three-way partnership between universities, government, corporate, to make sure that our New Jersey students understand the opportunities that exist in the state across so many sectors that are strong here.
And the government as an employer
Yes, of course.
as well. That's
Yeah.
a great pathway.
You know, Lou, that's really what it's all about, is these collaborations between government, industry, and education. One thing to keep in mind is that the fastest growing population of students in the state right now is not non-traditional students. In fact, this is a national trend. It's not the traditional students, it's non-traditional students. So the typical 18-year-old who comes in to college and gets an undergraduate degree, those populations are on the decline. What's on the increase is people who either dropped out and went into the workforce and now are coming back for degree completion, or they're back getting master's degrees and sort of reinventing themselves or furthering their education along those lines. So the real engine of economic growth for the state has to be these collaborations between business and industry and government and the education system. And education is changing so rapidly. The nature of the students, the digitization of it, the digital transformation of education is so difficult. I don't know if you know this about higher education, but they're resistant to change. The whole thing is set up not to change. The tenure system is about continuity. And so, the digital revolution is occurring, but it's just now getting going in higher education.
I think that's where business presents a tremendous opportunity. I think the reluctance for higher education to sometimes move as quickly as some of us would like, business has the opportunity because business brings capital. So I think that you have a vested interest in preparing the workforce that you need in order to do the work that your clients are expecting. So you can kind of come to the table, let's set down what your expectations are for the institutions, and partner to work with them, and you bring capital along as well as jobs. So I think that it's a really great opportunity when business engages at higher education. The one thing though that I'll say about government is that, and I say this, as a staffer, many years staffer working in the Senate and the Assembly, is you don't want government to be there to tell you guys what to do, either on the business end or in the higher education. I think that government can serve as a very good convener, but I think that the ideas come from you, and I think that there's going to be a lot of folks, the Senate President, the Majority Leader, the Speaker, who are going to want to sit and hear the ideas that you as business come together with higher education. And if it doesn't spend any money, or if you're bringing capital to the table, then they're going to be all for it and figure out a way to get it done. So it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think, too, the largest investment individuals will make in their life is education. Not only in terms of dollars, but also in terms of time. And Stephen brought up a good point, and when it comes to internships and that partnership of public-private that Jason was talking about. And because often, and what we see more of is businesses offering more opportunities for students to have internships. And it's a pretty simple formula. It is internships equals opportunities equals employment. And often those internships are that first foot into the door for many, many students. And as business and government makes more of those accessible to students, it provides that pathway in. And interesting enough now, the federal government now can tie your loans that you took out to go to school to the taxes that you pay working for a business. And it becomes the marker that many of the Washington Monthly's U.S. News can use to see, are students coming out of a school of higher education finding employment. And so there is some natural linkages that we have between business, government, and higher ed. It's sort of a three-legged stool, and one of those legs is not working properly. Then the system doesn't work properly in terms of the larger picture of keeping students here within the state.
So the topic of affordability has come up a couple of times already. I know in the independent sector where I work, the institutions work very hard to keep tuition affordable, to raise large amounts of financial aid. merit aid. Is college still a good value, and does the digital transformation afford us opportunities to make it more cost effective? What about college affordability in this state?
State schools are a good deal, but again, looking to other schools, like cost of attendance for Rutgers and New Brunswick, cost of attendance is tuition, room, board, books, and then miscellaneous fees, which there are many. Could be $33,000 per year for a student on average. If you look at SUNY Binghamton, that pick off a lot of New Jersey students, all in is about 37 for out-of-state students. That's pretty close to what Rutgers is in-state. And so it's from the value perspective and affordability, there's a disparity there. It's not enough to really convince them to stay. And then to bring students from other states, and I think creating that rich and diverse environment in schools when you have 92% of students in Rutgers from New Jersey, you want to broaden that because it'll broaden the appeal to even keep students here. Coming in from out of state, Rutgers could be almost $49,000. Compare that to a SUNY Binghamton or a UW, which is in the lower 40s. So we have to, as a landscape, look at where our students are going, what other schools are doing, and what they're doing well. And also, you touched on internships and public-private partnerships. Look at what schools like Northeastern have done, where they're a co-op school, and they've really promoted that as that will help you be ready for the workforce. Ironically, they don't publish how many students come out and get a job within a year. So does a co-op program automatically transfer to better employment opportunities? It's not always the case, but it's a perception. And so we should play to our strengths here because while affordability is of course paramount, it's an investment. So is it worth, if you have a realistic financial plan to be able to pay a little bit more for a school, will that investment in return be worth it?
Given such a strong job market here, it's excellent pathways into employment.
Absolutely.
So, this idea of return on investment is a good one, and populations of students think about this differently. For the traditional student, the 18 to 22-year-old, most of the time they're on some form of financial aid. Their parents are paying a large portion of it, of their living expenses, and it's a burden on the parents. And of course, they want their student, their son or daughter, to be an educated person, perhaps even go to the same school they went to. And so that there's sometimes competing visions about, what the experience should really be about. And for them, in many cases, it's just this getting away from home and establishing their own independence and studying something that is consistent with where they want to go with their lives. And there's a big debate in higher education about the value of educations in society and in industry, because we see so many of the non-traditional students back in graduate school now, essentially trying to reinvent themselves, where maybe they went to undergrad and majored in sociology, and now they're trying to work in a digital world, and they need computer skills, technology skills, so they're back in some form of technology program. So the return on investment is very different for those two populations. For the non-traditional student who's back in school trying to better their position, their job position, earn more money, they've already come of age. They have a mortgage, they have 3 kids at home. They're just trying to improve their ability to have gainful employment and make more money. So they're looking at it, from an entirely different perspective on this. But just quickly to note that technology plays a big role now in how people are looking at the cost of education. Open education resources is a huge thing, if you haven't looked at that lately. It's leveraging the internet and all of the resources through the library to catalog resources so that there are openly available resources instruction, as opposed to buying textbooks. You know, frankly, a lot of the cost of education is the textbooks. If you haven't looked at it lately, textbooks are $300 a piece. And when you've got to buy $1,500 worth of textbooks every term, that adds up. The other thing that technology is doing is starting to have a distribution capability that leverages the value of instructional assets, meaning that more students can learn from the best of instructors, as opposed to having student-teacher ratios that you're trying to fund that are very low. You know, a student-teacher ratio of 1 to 20, it should imply some level of quality, but not necessarily. It depends on the curriculum and the faculty member. So we're seeing the evolution of these things called MOOCs, these massively open online courses. There are different types of credentialing going on, micro-credentials. You'll hear about a lot of that type of stuff. So the nature of how people can earn credit for a college degree is changing, which is impacting in a large way the total cost of that education.
So I'm here to talk about, this is why I'm here for this question, by and large. And with affordability, it was one of the things that 3 years ago at Rutgers University-Camden, as I mentioned, really started to think about. We used our own institutional data. Data's good. Data tells you a lot. It told us that we were losing a lot of students out of state, but it also showed us that many of the students who did not come to us were students from lower middle incomes, working class families in South Jersey. And so we created a program called Bridging the Gap. It's a last dollar program, and what the program does is for families that have incomes between $0 and $60,000. After we apply federal and state aid, the institution comes in and picks up what remains of tuition and fees, covers the cost 100%. We are a large commuter campus. We have a very small residential. 92% of our students commute. We realized that this was going to have a large impact in the community that we find ourselves in South Jersey, and helping working class families. And secondarily to that, we wanted to do something that was different than how state and federal government does the awarding of financial aid. They look at they use a formula called expected family contribution. It's called EFC. I see many parents out there shaking their head. Yeah, we know what that is. The federal government looks at what kind of assets you have and counts that against you. What we had at Rutgers University-Camden was a lot of working class families that own businesses. And if you own a business, that becomes a marker against you in terms of getting, for example, a full Pell or a full tag grant from the state. And so what we did was created a program that didn't look at EFC, but rather we looked at AGI. What is that adjusted gross income that a family has to live off of? Stephen noted that many families have multiple children in school. And you may make $60,000. It doesn't go far in New Jersey. And when we looked at our student population, looked at the AGI of these families, looked at working class families that own businesses, we weren't doing a service to the students within the community that we find ourselves in. And hence, Bridging the Gap came into existence. And over $60,000, from $60,001 to $80,000, we cover 75% of tuition fees, and from $80,000 to $100,000, we pick up 50%. And it works, and it has worked. It works so well that the state of New Jersey is now doing their pilot program on free college as part of the governor's innovation economy. It's taking the Bridging the Gap program and applying it to community colleges for a pilot. And so it has been successful. Yes, our enrollment has gone up from students within those brackets. Our diversity has gone up, and we've kept New Jersey students within the state, and it's been successful. And we're looking forward for the community college, the free college program, to see how it goes with the pilot, and see if that becomes something that the state government then invests more in terms of doing it for the rest of the community colleges within the state, because affordability is an issue. And the reason we went to 100,000 is because we had families at $100,000 that had 3 or 4 children in school, and they still didn't have enough to afford, coming to a school like Rutgers and starting their education.
So New Jersey has an out-migration problem, but there's also an issue that we actually don't attract enough in-migration of college-bound students. I mean, we sit in a corridor of, 25 million population. Some of the most affluent places in the United States are within 200 miles of New Jersey. Do we do enough to attract college-bound students to come to New Jersey as a destination for education? And what could we do more? Because if we're exporting students, we need to import some to keep that balance. So it's sort of like a balance of trade. What can we do?
A national championship wouldn't help from field to field. I just say that because when I was a student at Rutgers, it was during the Shiano years, and that's one of the things that we started to improve, and it really translated, on paper, where we started to see more people coming as our athletic programs got better. I think part of it is we don't sell ourselves enough, and I talk about that not the legislature, not the universities, but us. I think we don't talk positively about New Jersey. We hear all the negative things, the armpit of the country, all the other stuff. I think sometimes we've got a little bit of an inferiority complex. I think we've got to do a little bit better on our own in terms of selling ourselves. I went to law school out west, and while I was out there, everybody thought that Rutgers was an Ivy League school, and they said, "Oh, this is amazing," and it's almost like you kind of take for granted that we're here. So I think that we've just got to, at all levels, kind of tout our own going a little bit better in terms of what we do. I think you see that kind of with the governors coming in. I think you see that the Senate president, I think, is, I don't tell him this, we're all friends in this room. I didn't know much about Rowan before I started working for him, but I know a lot about Rowan now, so I think you can kind of see what happens when somebody takes an interest and starts really pushing it, but we've got to do a better job on that and appreciate what we've got, at Rutgers Camden, and appreciate what we've got at the College of New Jersey before we expect other people outside the state to do it.
Yeah, Lou, I'll give you one more example. I think Jason's spot on his comments. But as an example, just our neighboring friendly state is New York. It takes a very holistic ecosystem approach to how they're promoting economic development. It's called Startup New York. And it's a consortium between higher education, business, industry, and government. Government offers tax incentives to have business incubation. Higher education has facilities, they have open space, they have office space, they have connectivity to technology and the internet. And the business and industry piece of it is that they're providing labor opportunities, they're defining what the workforce needs are, they're collaborating with higher education to create programs that are just spot on with the needs of industry. And this whole initiative, Startup New York, is advertised nationally, and it's attracting students into New York from all over the country because they're telling a very compelling story. It sounds like something exciting is happening up there. And it all started with conversations like what we're having here. And fortunately for them, their leadership was able to get together and bring all of these partnerships together. And as you look at what they're accomplishing, it's not anything that couldn't be done here in New Jersey as well. We just have to do it.
I saw many of the commercials from New York State during that ill-fated Yankees-Red Sox series, and they promote. We foster relationships between our universities, and they don't, especially with public, independent community college. It's just their university system with their industry. And it sounded awfully good, I have to say. So we have to kind of take a page from that book and learn more of how to do that and promote ourselves. We'll be tuning into the great cosmopolitan, metropolitan centers of the country and do better. We have great institutions here. Now, we don't have many. We only have 23 four-year institutions in New Jersey. They're all good, they're all strong, and they all should really merit far more interest from out of state.
But we have 5 research institutions.
Yes.
Rutgers is not the only one.
Just also remember, we're talking about 17-year-olds many times. And so, you know, getting a Big Ten championship would go a long way. I remember when Shiano was hired as a coach for football. I'm a fan. But even for me, paying one person $7 million a year to coach football, and I'm thinking, well, wow, that's a lot of tuitions that they could have helped with. But that's short-sighted, because when they broke into the top 25, they got thousands more applications the following year. So it works. And so I think we have to broaden our view in really what attracts people and students. You know, we work with students and parents. Man, we have some fun conversations, right? Because what everyone thinks is important could be so different. So you have to make a broader appeal and really market to the students as well about how great the campuses are, what it's like to have that school spirit, be proud. There's no reason that we shouldn't be, I'm a Rutgers alumni, that we should be as proud as our legacy and our network as Penn State, right? Or Syracuse, and they really promote their own, but I think that we as alumni don't take as much pride in it. So I think, again, promoting it, and I think it definitely has to start from the schools and how they market themselves and how they prioritize what they're doing to have that broader appeal is part of the answer.
But with state support, so the New York State ads are New York State ads, they're not ads from Syracuse.
But even the private schools should also be promoting New Jersey higher education.
And we do, yes. Right. We try to, yes. Right. So I want to switch gears a little bit. Mike is still on. This. Work itself, we just heard about work itself is being transformed. The digital transformation is affecting every industry, from pharmaceuticals, things like blockchain, and it seems like there's just so much to learn and absorb. What role does higher ed have to play in supporting our New Jersey companies through the digital transformation, through the transformation of work itself, and all those new skills that are needed for this 21st century economy and the innovation economy that the governor has spoken about?
Anyone want to?
Well, I'll touch on, I met the director of University of Delaware's career placement office, and I was really impressed. He said one of the most important roles that he finds in his job is developing relationships with employers. He says it's the hardest part of his job. It's the most time-consuming, frustrating. It takes years to gain trust. And if he sends them a student that's the wrong student, the relationship goes away just like that. So he's very careful who he sends to those opportunities, right? So I think that making that a focus of really reaching out to both government and private industry, partnering with them, finding out what skills they want the students to have when they come out, and really gearing their curriculum towards that is essential. And I think that sometimes there's a buffer, like academia in higher education. We do what we do, right?
but they're not listening to the business community, the potential employer saying, but this is what we need.
At a time of such great change, of course.
Right. With again, the new skills that our students need to have in the digital age. Things move so quickly, they have to be able to adapt, and the schools are too often lagging behind what those employers are really looking for.
I think that's a really good point. You know, Michael Dell recently said that work is not a place, it's a thing. And that's a whole new way of looking at it. If you look at the lines between, you know, what we used to call work-life balance, that used to mean, you know, at 5 o'clock everybody would hang their hat on the door and go home and be a family. That's not how it works anymore. It's just a continuum. You know, lifelong learning is a continuum. Learning doesn't stop when students exit the classroom. Your work doesn't stop whenever you get home. You know, I ride the New Jersey Transit trains every morning, and I look around, and without exception, everybody is sitting there on a mobile device, communicating, and they, you know, get anxiety if you're offline for too long, right? You know, how many of you can go for half a day without checking your iPhone? So it's, you know, it's symptomatic of how things are working, but you know, higher education is not catching on to that. At a prior time in my career, I was chief information officer for a large university, and I used to tell the faculty members, stop swimming upstream. If you go in and say, put away your iPhones and listen to me, I'm going to lecture to you for the next hour. You know, you're just swimming upstream on that, because that's not how students interoperate. And we had just put in a major new mobile application that allowed students to register online and do all of their activities. And shortly after we did that, a professor ended up in my office unexpectedly and was incredibly angry. I mean, he was yelling at me and saying all kinds of bad things to me, and he started his entrance into my office by saying, it's all your fault. And I thought, well, this is interesting. What's my fault? And accordingly, he did what I advised against, and he went into his classroom and told all the students to put their iPhones away to start class. And he said this one student over in the corner just kept working on his iPhone, and I went over to him and said, didn't you hear me? I said, put away your phones. And the kid stood up and said, I will in a minute, I'm dropping your class. And he was so upset. So I didn't know what to tell him other than, you know, welcome to the 21st century.
One of the innovative things that Rutgers Camden did, probably about 4 years ago, we created a digital studies degree. The reason for that degree was recognizing not only the need that businesses had told us that they had specific needs, but also to connect with the students coming in, because the degree we created was somewhat unique because it was a major that had to tie to another major to do it. And the reason for that was we found out from industry that many businesses were coming to us saying, I need students savvy on web design, but it can also speak German, because we have a large presence in Germany, and we need to have that. We need students that are can do design, web design work, but also are economists or finance, and it went on, and we realized real quick, oh, we hear you. We need something that can tie these things together, to tie these interests of students into the new economy, the digital economy, and allow them to come out with a tool set that they can get jobs immediately and be applicable to what they do for a living, and it's been very successful.
I would just encourage folks who are here, who are if you're on the business side, to approach, and I'm going to shout out to community colleges, but when I was working in the legislature, there was a community college who said, hey, we think this marijuana thing is going to really take off. We're going to build our program around, you know, marijuana cultivation, hospitality, and everything like that. There's an opportunity here for you to partner with institutions and kind of create the program that you want and create kind of the employees and what you're looking for. And I think when you do that, you do two things. You kind of capture this workforce, and you kind of develop a workforce in a certain direction. But there's a lot of students who are looking to get into that business as well, so you're also going to be attractive to folks on that level too. So that there's an opportunity, especially when you're coming from the business end, to say, hey, this is what we need. Sometimes you can go and meet with folks, over at the university. I'm sure that the chancellor here will facilitate conversations. We need more people like with the German, we need folks who can speak German and also do tech. We need folks that are going to know how the hospitality sector works, but take it from, gaming and shift it to marijuana. Like, you can kind of see trends and you'll see them in your workforce, and then you can kind of work with the university to kind of tweak and cater it to fit both, and it's a win-win.
Could adults enroll in the marijuana program?
I think we'll take anybody.
The topic of incumbent worker training. So obviously, digital transformation is changing a lot of industries. Have we seen that universities and companies have partnered on incumbent worker training? Do we need more of it because we're in a time of such tremendous transition? Just if any of the panelists might know of examples, technologies, or other tools that help us to transform our New Jersey workforce into a really powerful 21st century workforce and talent pipeline. Anyone?
Yeah, I think there's some good examples out in our universities of what are called practicum programs. And practicum programs are, in essence, simulations of real-world working environments. As one example, an IT help desk where students can actually maintain and fix problems for other students on certain applications. In today's digital learning environment, there's a lot of support that goes into learning management systems and all of the associated integrations that they have with virtual labs and with digital asset management systems and things like that. So the creation of a mock company that is staffed by students that are responsible for responding to trouble tickets and escalating them and seeking problem resolution gives an abundance of experience that is really valuable real-world experience. A student who lives in California who's fixing a problem for a student in New York on some cloud server located in Chicago is a very real-world experience. That's how the world works now. And so I think the institutions are starting to see that they need to develop these practicum programs where students get academic credit for working in simulated company environments so that when they go into the workforce, it's just a natural evolution.
Some of the cool things that I've seen is classroom environments, and I'm wondering if you have this down at Camden, but classroom environments that are having the students improve their skills of working with peers and more collaborative. So the classroom will have 3 walls. You could write on all the walls, right? And the professor, rather than getting up there and lecture, he's opening up a discussion and having you write ideas on the board wherever you are, and there's not rules of when you could get up and what you could look up if you need to. And so they'll work on the problem collectively, and then like one of the, this was Bryan College, Bryan University in Massachusetts. One wall is all glass, right? But right across the hall was 4 different smaller rooms, and the professor would say, okay, how about you 5 work on this together, go in the room, take 45 minutes, and then come back and let's present it, right? Right during class, off the cuff. And then they'll have to go and work on it together with no pre-planning, not a group that they've picked one or the other, but being forced to work with whoever you're paired with and try to do it collaboratively. The level of student engagement was phenomenal. Kids loved it, and so they're really expanding it at that school. So I'm just wondering if you implement things like that type of dynamic learning?
Yep. Yeah, our business school does it. They also will do contests as well, where you actually do a modified Shark Tank, and you get together. Just what you were saying. They get together. They think of a product, quote unquote, put it together. They work together, and they do a pitch for a contest. They get prizes for it. Many schools also will own, are fortunate enough to maybe own a hotel. And so hospitality management program is tied into that, so that they're actually, like you said, getting real world experience, whether it's keeping the website up to date, to managing, to the restaurant side of things, and to maintenance as well. Applied colleges will often have HVAC component pieces that then actually work on the units within a hotel, for example, to get that real world experience to their students. So yes, there's a lot of models like that that are very much engaging, where you're not being told to put away your phone, but use your phone, use the tools, the technology that you have to innovate. And like you said, they can hit the ground running when they come into a company. They get it, they know how to do a project plan and see it from start to finish.
Some very good examples. I think we have time for question and answer at this point. So if we have any questions for the panelists, please, we'll get you a microphone. Anne-Marie?
Just so you know, we reward audience participation.
Thank you, Steve.
Not going to break it today. We'll try it.
No, I'm good. Oh, okay. Now what do I do with it?
That's a first.
I have a question about dual enrollment. I know that now a lot of the high schools are offering that in partnership with the community colleges, where you can actually leave with your associate's degree. And I'm wondering, is that keeping students in state? Because a lot of in-state schools will accept it, where out-of-state schools would not. I'm just curious how that's working.
Works very well. We do it with one of our local high schools, the Leap Academy, and they do their senior year with us. It's our professors teaching those courses, and they get college credit, which is great because, like you said, you've already got them hooked in at a very fundamental level, whether they're at Rutgers Camden or at a community college, whereby, look, you have already achieved 12, 15, 20, 30 credits, and why not just stay in New Jersey, stay at the institution that you got it from, get your associate's, bachelor's. And schools are now doing it from the bachelor's to the master's. As the bachelor's degree becomes more common, companies often are looking for that master's degree or that next level. And so they're allowing students to sort of dual enroll internal to themselves, sort of double dip. They can take their last semester as a senior, take 15 hours that counts towards their graduate program, their master's, and also fulfills their undergraduate requirements as well.
What about NJ Stars program?
So, yep, NJ Stars is a great program. It's a state-funded program that sort of hooks them in early. Rutgers has the Future Scholars program that goes right into the middle schools and brings them forward into Rutgers itself and sort of hooks them early and allows them to get that college credit and have it apply. So yes, great question, and yeah, it's very effective.
But even the private schools, many times, if the student's coming out with an associate's degree, will have
Articulation agreement.
right, agreements that they'll take their entire curriculum, and all they'll need is the final 2 years of that four-year institution to get their bachelor's. So compared to coming in with the same amount of credits, but not the associate's degree, you'll probably lose some of those credits and have to take extra classes, potentially taking more than 2 years to get that four-year degree.
Right. So it's in all of our best interest to really work out those articulation agreements for seamless transfer of credit. And that's important. I know our institutions in the independent sector work very hard towards that, but we all need to do a better job to make sure that really not even one credit is wasted, because we want completion rates, we want students meeting their objectives.
One of the things that shocks people when we talk about this is the four-year graduation rates. And this is government studies that they've done. for students enrolling full-time in four-year programs. For public schools, the national average is 33%.
I know.
And private schools is 50%. Those are real statistics. To me, that's an epidemic.
Right, and the governor has made a point of that, and Secretary Smith-Ellis, about collecting those students and having special programs so that they can finish their degrees. Some of them might be 1/3 or 2/3 the way to their degree, but never have completed it. We need really wise programs to make sure that those students go on to complete their degrees.
So another example of these WISE programs is, as Lou says, we have in the state of New Jersey a very valuable asset in Thomas Edison State University. It's a very unique university in their approach. Dr. Meredith Hancock was just inaugurated as their president. If you have an opportunity to meet her, you should. She's a brilliant educator. She's working with the military right now so that students who graduate from high school and go into the military for a 4-year commitment, as they take their military training, it becomes automatically transcripted back at Thomas Edison State University. So when the students come out in 4 years, most of them are placing, as sophomores or juniors, and they have, some level of aid from the military to complete their degree. So it's a pathway that is instantiated as they come out of high school that projects 8-10 years down the road, that gives them the guidance and the means to complete their military service and then come back home and complete their education as well.
Thanks. Any other questions?
I had a question. You had mentioned New Jersey STARS program, which is a great program, but it always seems to have a dark cloud over it that it's going to be cut in the next budget season, which leads me to how much impact with constant talk of budget cuts and companies moving out of the state impacts children willing to go to in-state schools. How do you overcome that?
I think what you're saying is very true. In fact, the NJ STARS 2 program, it used to be that if you, for those of you not familiar, NJ STARS, if you're in the top 15% of your high school class and meet other minimum requirements, you could get tuition free at your community college. And if you then maintained a 3.25 or above in your associate path, then you could go into the NJ STARS 2. It used to cover half the tuition at the state, at whatever college you transferred to, the state colleges. Now I think the maximum they'll fund for NJ STARS 2 is $1,250. Yay, okay? That doesn't cover books. So yeah, that's definitely an issue. I think a bigger issue is the stigma. That if you're one of the top 15% in your school, do you really want to go to a community college? And that's unfortunate because while it shouldn't be a default path, it's certainly a good option for many families. I remember my son now is a senior in college. Wow, I have twins that are seniors in high school, so time flies. But I remember when we were at a college night at his high school. He was a very good student, top student, class president, and we went to this college night. My wife and I are sitting there, and my son just said, "Dad, please don't embarrass me." So I didn't really want to ask any questions, but they had a panel of representatives from all schools, like Muhlenberg and Princeton and Bloomsburg and County College of Morris. And when they were doing the Q&A, everyone was getting questions, but this poor dean from community college, right? And so I kind of raised my hand. I saw my son sink in his chair a little, and I said, "Isn't there a program for, students that are top students?" I just threw the bait, and he was like, "Oh, definitely." And he started talking about it, and he was excited to get a question. I wanted that if there were people out there that maybe, God forbid, lost their job or were in a tough way, and they were worried that they couldn't give their child the opportunity that he or she deserves, that there's still a path if you're open to looking at what's important and balancing everything that's important. So what I didn't see coming is the next day my son was walking through the halls, and the principal saw him and said, "Jay, come here for a second." And Jay walks over. He says, "So Jay, you're not thinking about community college, are you?" Right? He was so worried that one of their top students should go to community college. Where do you think the stigma is coming from? Because the college, the high schools want to say, well, look at where our kids go. But they're not looking at the whole family and their situation. So I think it's a lot of different factors, and we're always trying to educate to open their minds to what might really be best for the family in the long run.
Another question?
Hi, my name is Patty Moran. I am the apprenticeship director at NJMEP, and I also am an adjunct professor. I teach at Middlesex County College at night, and I teach at William Patterson. At Middlesex, I have freshmen. At William Patterson, I have seniors. And one of the things that I see, of course, with my freshman students is many of them are there because mom and dad said you're going to college. And I think it's really important today that we even start with the family, that at 18, not every child has to go to college. There are other alternatives and other pathways that they can go to, as long as they get skills and abilities, and maybe later on they'll enter when it's the right time for them. I see that as a huge contributing to their student debt. They don't like being there. Why are they there? And I think if we don't start building relationships with the VOTEC schools, the industry associations, and pathways that way, I think we're at a critical point in there.
I just want to apologize. I think it says a lot for you to step out there and say that, because I said that when I was board president, and people were like, "Oh, our kids aren't good enough to go to college." Yeah. I said I didn't say that.
No.
But I said there's some kids who college isn't the right path for them, or maybe they don't know what the right path, or maybe it's a trade, or maybe it's to go in. There's a bunch of different paths. But I think that the problem is, you talked about the stigma. The stigma is there, but the stigma is also kind of perpetuated by the Department of Education, because up until a few years ago, you only got credit if your kids went on to college.
Correct.
You didn't get credit if your kids had gone on to service, or if your kids had gone on to a trade school. So we're doing a better job at the state level to shift that discussion, but the stigma is still there. But I think that you're right, especially with the cost for universities. You see some kids, and so they apply, and so they're like, okay, well, we finally got into, pick your college, and I get no money. And so then, your first year is $50,000, and then you make a choice, and it's a family decision when that type of money is expended, and you have $50,000 expended to identify that this isn't the right place for me. And so now the whole family is financially strapped. The individual, the kid who still only has a high school diploma is tough, because now they have to find a job that pays the most so they can pay back the loan for the 1 year that wasn't right for them. So I think you're absolutely right, and I think that
100%.
Because you speak this, and people think that you're making a value judgment about the students, and you're not. You're just saying, let's make sure that this is the right place for them, so that we don't have this huge expenditure of money for naught.
Right. I think it is huge, and I mention it. I think government, Department of Ed, everybody has to put the marker at a different point. To say that at the age of 18, every kid is going to head to college is definitely the wrong move. 2 years post-secondary is going to shoot them into that middle class, no matter where it may be. And I think that's really important. So another point I want to make is, so I see this at William Patterson, my college seniors, I drill into them the importance of co-ops, internships, civic engagement. All of those things are getting engaged with industry. College seniors should take place way before that, but many of them don't have that. So I think higher education is at a critical point to start engaging industry partners, and the industry partners should engage with education so they can start creating those pathways for those students, because they want to have experiences to talk about at their resume. Extraordinarily important. They want to be able to say, I did something else other than working at whatever retail store they could have worked at. They did something in line with their major that gives them meaningful work experience, so they can go on and get a good job in their career path.
And that's critically important today. And we have to remember that the students we're sending out of state are having their internships out of state, connecting with those companies, and so much less likely to come back to have their career here in New Jersey. So there's a new normal since the recession, which is this emphasis on internships, which can really hurt us in terms of this out-migration, in-migration. So your point is very well taken. We have to make sure that our in-state students are connecting with all the strong companies we have here to see that this is a really good place, not only to study, but to build their careers and lives.
Claudia Marchese. Just a couple of comments and a question. One, it's a shame what you said about the stigma at the about community college and what the high school is saying, because I know at Raritan Valley, where I am in Hunterdon County, they have an honors program. So they're encouraging the honors kids to go. I have a 16-year-old who just looks at me, his plan is like, why would I spend that much on 4 years of college? I'm just intending on going to Raritan Valley first, and I'll figure it out. So it takes some of the pressure off of us, but he still has to, I know, think about what all these other opportunities are and what he can do. I have a 19-year-old who's taken 3 semesters off now. He's not ready. And so, I don't know, I'm a little bit frustrated with him, but let's find your space first. So I agree with all of that. But what you said, Stephen, about the discouraging statistic about the 4-year graduation rate, why is that? Why are students going to 4-year colleges and they're not getting out in 4 years? And maybe I'm naive because I kind of had a smooth path. I went to Douglas, spent my 4 years, got out, moved on, and never considered it being, some of my friends did the 5-year plan because they screwed up freshman year. I don't know what else is going on now that these kids, aren't able to do it in 4 years. Are they changing their major? Are they, just kind of getting into trouble?
We can have an entire panel discussion about this, but I'll give you some of the highlights, okay? One of the things is parents are relating what their experience was with what our kids' experience will be. And it's so different. The cost of college is so different, and the choices they have in fields of study are so much broader, specialized. A 17-year-old typically has not figured out what they want to do for the rest of their life. And so if they go to a $40, $50, $60, or $70,000 a year school and they change their major, many of those credits might not transfer to their new track, which turns it into a 5-year. And if they were really budgeting for 4 years and they were absolutely, this is all we could do, a 5th year blows that up. And as far as the financial aid process, game, whatever you want to call it, because now schools will promote 89% of our students get aid, either need or merit, right? That wasn't that way at all during our generation. And so if a student gets a merit award to make college affordable, they might have a GPA requirement of a 3.2 in order to get it. Well, if they come and they're adapting to the new learning environment their freshman year in college, they were a 3.5 in high school, they might be a 2.9 or a 3.1 at college that freshman year. Well, what happens to the merit award? It goes away. And even though they might recover, it almost never comes back, right? So if they don't come out of the gate, banking those A's, they could lose their merit money. Again, all of those things, transferring colleges, right? They want to go away and then realize, man, I really wanted to be closer to home. Well, guess what? When you're transferring from that private school out of state to in-state, there's probably going to be credits that don't come along, and you're going to lose time as well. So there's just a lot of reasons. One of the biggest is people aren't aware of it, and they're not talking about it.
I just want to add developmental education. Sometimes that takes a whole year.
Right, acclimation.
I think, and I think we've had to, as institutions, really start thinking of students holistically. Which you're right, in the past that may not have been something. Now schools have, my counterpart at Rutgers Camden is a vice chancellor for student academic success. So he's looking at the students holistically, because many of our students, where they may live at home, they're also taking care of not only their own families, but their parents as well. Many of our students are ones taking care of their their families, and so life gets in the way. Transportation may get in the way. Childcare may get in the way. And transferring of credits, financial aid becomes an issue. If they've if their GPA has gone below a certain point, they lose that scholarship. What are we doing to say, well, you're not eligible for this one, but you are eligible for the next one down, and not taking it away holistically? So I think institutions, too, have to do better at looking at those students holistically, but providing, especially those new freshmen, everything from study skills to getting them orientated to college life and everything, because for many of them, it's a whole new experience, and it's a different generation, like Stephen said, that are coming in.
I just want to touch on one thing real quick. Like Rider University has a program for students that, let's say they were late bloomers. They really didn't apply themselves to their full potential in high school, right? It's the PACE Achievement PACE Achievement Program, I think it's called, where they see some promise, but they are lacking skills, because if they didn't do the work they should have in high school, they're lacking writing skills, math skills, so they have to interview for the program. They could be awarded merit scholarships for the program. And so even though you think your 2.2 GPA student with 1,100 SAT is not going to get merit money, they might if they're right for this program. Smaller class sizes, same curriculum, so they're still on track, but also they have an extra writing class, and they have individualized guidance and support. And I think it was 95% of the students that make it through the year in that program get four-year college degrees. These were students that the guidance counselor probably said, oh, maybe you shouldn't go to college. Maybe you should look at a trade school. So even at the college level, even in New Jersey, there's programs that could help a lot of students if we're looking at really their individual needs.
We do a summer bridge program that's similar. Yeah.
Shameless plug, you come to people like me, but
Right.
This is a really interesting question that you asked. There's some interesting data, I think, that is coming out on how students make choices of the institution, and it goes to institutional fit, which is a big factor that contributes to attrition as well. And if you look at the questions that students were asking in the 80s and 90s, even about selection of schools, it was, how easy is it for me to access my professor? What are the hours of the computer lab? And things like that. Those questions aren't being asked anymore. The questions today that students are asking are, how's your Wi-Fi coverage? How much bandwidth do I get? Is it burstable after 5 p.m.? Because students are literally dropping out of college because they can't, play YouTube videos adequately or games that they're playing adequately.
It's really true.
Yeah, and so the institutional fit is no longer that, this curricular offering that I thought was here is not right for me. It's, because I'm not happy with the technology on campus.
So we have one more question? Yes, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Jackie Lou Rea. I am the Director of Corporate Outreach and Training from Fairleigh Dickinson University. And Louis, I wanted to get back to the question that you posed to the panel before regarding incumbent workers. What, if anything, are corporations and businesses in the community asking regarding collaborating with institutions of higher education for training specifically their incumbent workers?
What we see is a lot of institutions are asking business, what can we do in terms of incumbent worker training? A lot of institutions, including a lot of ours in the independent sector, are really stepping up to credential programs that we know it might not be a graduate degree or post-secondary, that it's a certain credential. Sometimes this is called merit badges. Is that we need, we need our employees to write apps in JavaScript or something else, or cybersecurity or data analytics. Of course, we're seeing tremendous need. So I think a lot of the institutions have been willing and able to step up to these needs when they're made aware of them. So the message I wanted to leave is for the businesses in the room, feel free, meet with your regional university, meet up with them, convey what you need. We understand that your core business is not education. It is our core business, and we're ready, willing, and able to kind of step up to the skills that you need in your workforce. And we understand there's kind of tremendous change and transition. Let us help you through that by kind of crafting programs that meet your incumbent worker training needs. So we're seeing a lot more of this. We encourage businesses to come forward, and I think you will find really receptiveness, because we understand that the market is changing with declining demographics and other things. But the opportunity for incumbent worker training is important for all of us in this state, that we have a true 21st century workforce ready with all of the skills that they need. And we are in the education business. We're looking to help with that.
Okay, I guess I started it off, so I'm going to ask a final question for the day, and I think this is more towards Jason, but anybody feel free to answer. My son is a senior in high school, and I've not seen any, I haven't seen corporations come in, and I don't know if there's a program, or maybe this is something the state's working on, to partner with the companies in New Jersey to go into the high schools, have them go through state schools to then come into their workforce. Is there any kind of programs out there that will benefit to the private sector to work with the schools to get these students to stay in state?
So I was really spoiled. I went to probably the best high school in the country. I went to High Tech High on the campus of Brookdale Community College. And so when I graduated in 1996, and in my senior year, we had a program like that, where it was self-directed, but you could go and meet with businesses or whoever, and then you'd spend 2 mornings a week with them, working in the respective fields and getting that experience. And then we also got the college credits from Brookdale Community College as well. I think that you're seeing more of that. I think that there's definitely an opportunity for more of that to occur. But I think it's kind of incumbent upon the respective school districts to do it. Monmouth County Vocational School District was very aggressive in pushing that. I think we did some of that when I was on the board in Trenton, but it's tough. You have to, it really requires business to step to the table and also have the commitment from the district to work. And it's not easy. It's definitely definitely a tough conversation, but there's value there on both sides. There's value not only for the business to kind of come up with a training program that works for them to get the workers they want, but I always tell, I teach at Rutgers, I always tell my students, like, the bigger value is more for you. This is one, a job interview. So you go in the door and you're like an insider and you're part of that family. But the other thing too is you know whether or not you like this experience. I said the best experience I had when I was in college is I took a job working in Trenton. I went to Trenton and I was working in an office building. So I thought I was going to the Capitol. And I worked in this department, and I said, I will never work in this again. And he said, there's a real value there in that experiential learning, because you're there, you're in it, you know what it's like, you get the full feel, and that will help guide you as you make your career choice. The worst thing that you can do is walk down, get your degree from the chancellor, and then report on Monday and say, I hate this, but you're stuck there because that's really where you are. So I think there are programs that are there, but I think that there's an opportunity for business to engage, and there's more, and do more of that.
So there's no state incentives to industry, tax incentives to keep students in state?
Not really.
Clearly, we need one. Less comment?
We do need it because it's hard enough to get college students to go to a career fair until they're in their senior year. Try to do it with high school students. And I've seen this many times with private schools. I mean, we get invited to talk in public schools, but private schools are always worried that we're going to help them talk about value, and somehow, they're worried about that, well, maybe what they're paying for private school isn't giving them the value they want. So they're worried about it. So they're competing interests. So I think that high schools need government to provide incentives to deliver that message. What we talk about with students is just remember, if you're looking for a job and you're sitting down for an interview, your employer, potential employer is thinking a lot, but one main thing, whatever it costs me to hire this person, will they help me make more money than it costs me? And if not, I don't need you. I may like you, you may have a great pedigree, but is there value for me? And the message they're getting is that if they go to this high school, they go to that college, that it's all handed to them. They're not realizing that the whole point is that you have to learn how you could give more value. In everything you do, that provides security.
So we're at kind of final wrap up. I'd like if each of the panelists maybe wants to have a sentence or two of final summary. Jason, if we could start with you, and we'll just go right down the line.
No, I think that this is a great conversation, but I would encourage you to have this conversation with your local community college, your local colleges. But I think that the expertise is in this room. So I worked for a speaker series, now Congressman series, when he came up with the NJ STARS idea. That idea was presented to him, and he came up with it, and it became legislation. So there could be an idea here that's going to, change how we do higher ed. That's going to keep students here, and maybe zero cost. That maybe one of you has. And so I would encourage you to meet with your policymakers or talk about it. I'll also open myself up. I spend time there. We can talk about it here, and we can, facilitate those conversations because that idea might be in this room, and we just don't know it.
Thanks, Craig.
And I definitely agree with Jason. I think as we look at higher education and what it means, the whole public-private component piece is so important because ultimately many of the students are ultimately going to be in the private sector and maybe in government as well, and assuring that is, I guess now it's a four-legged stool. It is working the private side, business, you've got the federal, state, and then you have the local as well, the institutions of higher ed. That sort of, there needs to be synergy there because, capitalism, we all feed upon ourselves in order to make the economy go. And it's important for all of us to see that we're part of that piece of the puzzle to shape the economy and shape the next generation of students that are coming into the workforce and into the academy. Thanks, Craig. Steve?
So I love conversations like the one we're having because I do believe it takes a perspective that we could all benefit if we're not working with competing interests. And I mean, public and private, a lot of times they're butting heads. The high schools and the colleges have different goals. Employers, what they want, is that really being served? So bringing a forum like this together where we have people from the government, people from colleges, people in business, I would just encourage you to try to broaden your horizon in your spheres of influence so that we could really tap into a lot of the great resources we have as employers. Go out to these colleges. They have great resources. Rutgers is one of the best kept secrets because they've done so many things right in the last 15 years, but they don't promote themselves well enough, okay? And they should, but the resources are there so that if you're business people and you want to go and find out, develop that relationship, outreach to that college to say, we look to hire and these are what we look for, and start that conversation. It's a great untapped resource for business.
Thanks. Sam?
So I would say that higher education is becoming more and more consumer driven by the moment, and higher education institutions are struggling with that. So these types of partnerships and collaborations between government and industry and education are so critical. We're dealing with a very complex problem with this out-migration business and completion rates. You look at the retention, graduation, and placement rates in our institutions, and they're just abysmal. And so it's a very complex problem that I think demands a marketplace of ideas. So I would invite everyone to stay engaged and contribute your ideas into these conversations. They're so important that we keep all of this moving forward.
Thanks, Sam. So what I thought I heard is a lot of emphasis on relationships and relationship building. What I could say is working with the independent sector of schools is we're very anxious to have those conversations. We welcome the opportunity to connect with business, to understand needs. If we could bring government into that as well and create that kind of really ideal three-way partnership, businesses, government, and the universities, I think that is what it will take. We are in some really challenging times of sort of great transition in just about every industry, and it would take us really all working together to have that strong 21st century workforce that we will need to compete on the global scale. I'd like to thank our panelists for an excellent job. I'd like to thank NJBIZ for sponsoring such a timely and important topic. I thought it worked exceptionally well, and I'd like to call Howard up to sort of wrap up for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. How about a round of applause for our moderator and panel? You know, at NJBIZ, we want to be part of that discussion as well. Obviously, we put on this forum this morning, but we want to be a conduit for that conversation that everyone here has talked about. If you read our pages, you'll see that we're always reporting on new programs that the institutions are coming up with to link students with those who are doing the hiring. And so keep reading NJBIZ, where that's our emphasis in our coverage. For those of you who don't read NJBIZ, you can get a free subscription just by seeing Anna Aquaviva over there at the desk on the way out. Coverage of this event will be on our website this afternoon. It will be in our paper next Monday, and a video of this forum will be posted on our YouTube channel. Our next panel discussion is scheduled for November 20th. It will be on a very important topic, health insurance, as the open enrollment period is upon us. Health insurance is top of mind, so we hope that you'll join us for that. That's it for our program. Thank you all very much for coming, and we hope to see you again soon.